I'm finally doing it. I'm finally making a negative video. How do you feel about that? Nervous, really. I know a lot of channels made their platform off of negative videos, and I don't want to end up like that. So what are you gonna do about it? And try to have a point, so it won't just be thing bad. It'll be why thing bad and what it means. That's good, kid. That's good. Way back in 2015, which honestly feels like a lifetime ago, Brad Bird's second live-action film released, Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland released to a not super receptive world, both critically and with audiences. It was his first and so far only film to not get over a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, despite my opinions on a certain film. So what happened to this film? Why wasn't it anywhere near as good as any of his other movies to this point? Well, honestly, I think some of that can be contributed to Ghost Protocol, his first live-action movie releasing 4 years prior. Now, not to say that I think Ghost Protocol is a bad movie. I really enjoy the Mission Impossible series, and this one is no exception. There really is only one exception.
If I let you know where I'm going, I won't be on holiday.
But up to this point, Brad Bird had written and directed 3 standalone animated movies with no real plans to make sequels. And then he gets the job to do Ghost Protocol, the 4th movie in an action franchise with pre-established characters. Now, I think, and I said in my Incredibles video, that one of the things that Brad Bird really gets is characters, making lovable, memorable, hateable characters, and giving them heartfelt relationships that you care about. So when he made Ghost Protocol, which is also the only film he's directed where he wasn't a main writer, he just didn't have any of that. And yes, it still turned out good, and also introduced one of my favorite characters of the franchise, but I think it got him a little rusty, or rather thinking it was something that he didn't have to worry about if you made an action film with extremely interesting visuals and action. So when Tomorrowland came out, people started to see it highlighted everything that can be bad with Brad Bird's writing and directing style, especially with the lack of interesting characters or relationships. Its heavy-handed message, like all Brad Bird's films have, seems especially heavy-handed because you don't have any characters you can relate to dealing with that topic. And because the movie comes off as so character-based, it feels extremely slow despite having some really fun action scenes. It comes off as very flashy, but robotic. But why do I bring this up in a video about Incredibles 2? Well, I think it's important to look at where, when, and why the cracks in Brad Bird's writing and directing came to be. To really be able to look at why I think Incredibles 2 is so bad, we have to understand how we got here.
Yeah, and it's not like you haven't been keeping busy. You did some live action stuff, of course.
Yes.
How has that helped you as a director when you went back to animation?
Well, it hasn't helped me in any easily quantifiable way. It's more that each film teaches me something about the medium. You know, I feel like I've studied a lot for a long time. I've worked in it for a long part of my life, and yet it's still mysterious to me.
Yeah.
I feel like the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Right.
So
Always learning.
yes,
Yeah.
and so I think that you learn some things just by telling more stories. Mostly you learn about, this is probably not going to be a productive place for me to spend my time. It's feeling like it's a trap, so I'll divert.
I think Incredibles 2 is a bad movie, but it's a complicated subject. If this movie had come out on its own with no Incredibles at all, I would probably maybe give it a 3 out of 5 and call it par for the current Disney course. And it is a lot better than Tomorrowland. So why do I dislike it as much as I do? Well, a lot of that has to do with The Incredibles existing. I made a short video about it last month, trying to nail in some of the main things I like about that movie, but to summarize, it has unique and interesting visuals, a refreshing, serious tone and themes, and the biggest of all, a great family dynamic full of interesting characters that grow and change through the course of the movie. Oh yeah, and a great, understandable villain. And when I sit down and watch Incredibles 2, it feels like Brad Bird forgot about The Incredibles, or at any rate, hadn't watched it in a very long time when he wrote it. This movie has amazing visual style, even if it is a little bit more streamlined than the first one, but it loses its tone and characters. The writing falls off, and it feels similar to what we got with Tomorrowland, albeit not that extreme. So let's look at some of the writing of the story to try to show what I'm talking about, broken down into 3 mini points or sub-points or something. Writing, consistency, and tone. Oh yeah, and spoilers for the movie, I guess.
You will never become legal. Ever.
Never?
No.
Ever?
No.
To look at how the writing is in this movie, let me try to explain the villain's plan in Incredibles 2 and show the sloppy nature of the writing. Now, Evelyn hates superheroes because she blames them for the death of her parents, even though it's in a really arbitrary way and it was kind of her dad's fault the whole time. I mean, superheroes were made illegal. What did her dad expect? Anyway, she plans to use hypnosis, cameras, and fake villains to make everyone not trust the superheroes so that they'll never become legal again. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, superheroes are already illegal. And not only were they already illegal, but the agency that's helping them stay covered up and helping them out literally just got disbanded. It does not exist anymore. The superheroes are on their own. Oh yeah, and through her brother, she's used her technology to help them get a really good case to become legal again. Now, this just seems ridiculous to me. Why help them be legal? Why not just hypnotize your brother or something and let them take the heat they were already getting for doing hero work illegally? Like, they get hypnotized, but like the kids were there, so they pop in last second using Jack, and her plan is ruined. Her plan to make them more illegal, maybe, I think is what she was going for. But I think this is a really good example of how the writing feels in this movie. On the outside and at a quick glance, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But if you take time to, like, think about it and look at it, you're like, wait, why? Why is this this? And if you're looking at this from, like, a writing perspective, what does this mean? What's the point the movie is trying to make? Like, it seemed like the movie did have a message when the screenslaver was going on and on about, I don't know, TV or something.
Superheroes are part of your brainless desire to replace true experience with simulation. You don't talk, you watch talk shows. You don't play games, you watch game shows.
But it's pretty apparent in the movie that Evelyn cared nothing about what the screenslaver was actually saying. The only thing Evelyn cared about was ruining the supers' names. So not only do you have a villain that's unsatisfying, but she also doesn't seem to have any real reason of existing in the realm of the movie. Like, obviously she's there for them to fight, but thematically in the movie, why does she exist?
But what is amazing about The Incredibles is that, who can't relate to them? Because at the core of it, it really is about the dynamic of the family.
Right.
And how you've created each character to fit their superhero aura, you know what I mean? So tell me a little bit about how they've evolved that way.
Next, we're going to look at the consistency of the writing between the two movies, because despite how it may feel, this movie is in fact a sequel. So let's go all the way back to 2004 and take a look at where we left the story. Mr. Incredible has learned not to just fight for himself, but to fight for others and his family. Elastigirl has regained trust in her husband and accepts that their superpowers are a part of them and that they shouldn't pretend to be something they're not. Violet has learned to have confidence in herself and her abilities. Dash finally has an outlet for all of his power. Dash and Violet have both learned respect for each other through their shared experiences. And Jack, well, he's Jack, but we'll get to him later. The family has completed their character arcs and can now work together as a family. They can now be the Incredibles and defeat Syndrome. And even though being a superhero is still illegal, they can't just let people get hurt. It's like in My Hero Academia. But it's right at the beginning of this movie when I knew something was up. Instead of working as a family to fight the Underminer, the kids get sold to stay behind, which, this happened 3 months earlier.
Get out of here, kids! Find a safe spot! We're not going anywhere!
And then they fight over which person will watch Jack and who will keep the crowd back. They've lost every bit of their arcs from the first movies, to the extent that Violet throws down her mask out of frustration at the situation, which for some reason has major repercussions in the story, and becomes one of my least favorite subplots ever. The Tony plot. And this goes on for the whole movie, with the kids constantly fighting. Well, yes, they're acting more like normal siblings now. 3 months ago, they went through an extremely traumatic event, and I think it would take a little longer than that to get over it and lose everything they gained in their relationship with each other. Another one of my least favorite things about this movie is Bob. Bob has always had character flaws. That's why he was the main character in the first one. But not being able to handle his wife doing hero work when he can't seems so ridiculous for his character to me. At one point he looks like he is in physical pain because his wife is doing a good job and staying safe. There's one mention of this topic in The Incredibles when they argue over who gets the guy, but it's literally expressly stated as playful banter in the universe of the movie. They're literally just flirting with each other. I get that Bob has a fragile masculinity. That's why he wanted to relive the glory days in the first movie. But part of his character arc in that movie was getting over that and loving and supporting his family, and realizing that he can't do it all by himself or all by crashing through walls. Again, it's like Brad Bird didn't watch The Incredibles and was just working off of memory when he wrote this. Although this movie takes place literally immediately after the first one, it feels like these characters had that 14 years it took to make this film to forget everything they'd learned as characters. This movie has a tone problem. While it's not horribly awful by itself, though it's still pretty bad, put next to The Incredibles, it's horrible. So much of what made The Incredibles feel so fresh, and still fresh today, honestly, was that it kept pretty serious and balanced the comedy of it with the serious tone extremely well. This movie doesn't do that. To talk a little bit about a major factor of that, I have one of my good friends, Luke, of ItsLuke.
By a distance, the biggest gripe I have with this film is baby Jack. This child is the worst thing that could have happened to this film. In the first Incredibles, the idea of Jack being a superhero was slowly teased throughout the film until we got a fun scene of Jack revealing he has powers, causing Syndrome's demise, which to me feels a bit lazy, but I do not have time to go into this here. Despite my issues with it though, for the audience who paid any amount of attention, it gives a satisfying conclusion in which all of the story threads are wrapped up. In this film, the child is the same, but for the whole 118-minute runtime. which is incredibly obnoxious. This is at its worst in this scene though, when Jack uses every single one of his powers to beat up a raccoon. For minimal apparent reason. Obviously the scene was designed to get Jack using his powers and showing off what he could do, which is everything. But it just doesn't come across well. It feels wrong that this is being used on an animal. Some examples of this power use consist of throwing a burning table at this raccoon, chasing it around with laser eyes, and duplicating itself into many to jump on it. Only to be praised by Mr. Incredible. This was being played for all points. Yeah, I sat in the theatre incredibly uncomfortable, considering they were expecting me to laugh at this, and this is a sequel to a film that wasn't reliant on comedy or an awe factor to get you invested in what's happening. This element is what the film relies on heavily for marketing, therefore it is not just restrained to one scene, it is tied into its own subplot, which, while has good elements, is not great. And so, you bounce between the Elastigirl plot, which is, I'll be fair to it, similar in tone to the first, not good, but similar in tone, to this outrageous who knows what, about the baby and Mr. Incredible. For any audience member, this is really jarring, because structurally, it is two completely different tones, which is very damaging. I've been ItsLuke. I'm sure my link's in the description. If not, I don't care. Sub to Micah. Toodles.
One question Bird has heard frequently is this one.
I was wondering, at any point did you consider using real actors for the film? Or were you always going to make it an animated?
Why? Animation's much more fun. If the only reason to make animation is to have fairies and talking animals, then pretty soon animation would be extinct. To me, that was never the reason to do animation to begin with. It was all about caricature and distilling down the essence of something. And the animation part is just secondary, you know.
So, what is the point I was trying to make? Why did I just rant about a movie to you? Well, I think the main point I'm trying to take out of this whole experience is, especially in the current movie culture, don't lose track of you and your creative style. Don't lose what makes you special and what you're good at. Brad Bird in his movies is always talking about the individual things that make people special, be it a weapon, a rat, a superhero, or even an ordinary kid. In Ratatouille, he even talks about how things have more value than critics can even give them credit for if they have heart, because that's what makes things special. Through Ghost Protocol to Incredibles 2, Brad Bird movies have felt less and less like the Brad Bird who made my favorite movie, and more like any other mainstream movies. They've lost what made his prior movies so memorable. Like I said, this movie without the context of The Incredibles, I wouldn't blink an eye at. It's mediocre, its plot doesn't make much sense, and it's extremely forgettable. Brad Bird's first 3 movies mean so much to me. They've had a huge effect on me growing up, and still have an effect on me today. I connected with the characters. I loved the characters because Brad Bird loved the characters. But the latter half of his movies really mean nothing to me. I don't know if I can even call Brad Bird my favorite director anymore, because I haven't loved something he's made in over 10 years. The heart of Brad Bird seems to be gone. Now, I'm not saying if you have something that you're good at that you should never ever change. But if you do change and switch styles to something else, don't lose what made you special. You can make an action movie with good characters. You can make a kids movie without sacrificing plot and themes. Don't become just another movie based on a ride, or just another kids' superhero movie. Don't become just another robotic director.
You can let me go now. Goodbye, Frank.
Goodbye, Athena.
The topic of this one was a lot more personal for me since, like I said, Brad Bird's first 3 movies have meant a lot to me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks so much to Luke for doing this collaboration with me. The links to his YouTube channel and to his Storyfire profile are in the description, so please go show him some love. If you want to help support this channel in any way, one of the biggest things you could do right now, well, I'm so small, is share it with people. So if you semi-like my videos, please tell someone. You can follow me on Twitter. I post quite often. It's at Micah_Grayway. Thank you again if you watched this far in the video, and until next time, guys, goodbye.
Boys are jerks and superheroes suck.